Hi, I'm Judy Sims. Let's get started remembering who you are. So perhaps right now you're thinking, maybe this isn't the video for me because I've been around long enough to know who I am. And of course, that's true. You do know who you are, mostly. But it's also very likely that you've forgotten some of the best stuff about yourself. The kind of stuff you knew when you were little, but somehow over time just lost sight of. It's surprisingly easy to forget who we are, and when we do, it's usually because we're in what I call a contractive cycle. So what's that? What's a contractive cycle? And for that matter, what makes us begin to forget who we are in the first place? Well, in all my years as a coach, as well as just looking at my own life, I've come to realize that it all begins with some kind of plateau. The plateau can be internally derived, so we feel stuck, we're bored, we're unhappy in our lives, or it can be the result of an externally imposed shock. So perhaps we've been fired, or we're experiencing some kind of health crisis. With the plateau comes this terrible sense of decline. Things just aren't as good as we think they should be. And this causes us to begin to operate from a fear state. So, what are we afraid of? In actuality, there's only really three big fears in life: fear of loss, fear of less, and fear of never. We fear we'll lose our job or a relationship. We fear we'll have less money or less time or even less status. And we fear that we'll just never have the things we want in life, or the level of success we want, or the appreciation we want. And at the core of all those fears is the big daddy of them all, the fear that we're just not good enough. And if we're not good enough, that perhaps that means we're not worthy of love. And this is where the trouble starts, because this is where we begin to forget who we are. Think back to when you were 2. You were your whole remarkable self. You were full of love. You were fascinated by everything. You were dedicated to growth. But as you grew older and were socialized, and especially as you approached puberty, you began to forget all the good stuff. And this is because your socialization trained you to prioritize values about who and how you should be over values about who and how you could be. So let's talk about those should values. They're the things that your parents or teachers might have said to you when you were young. So they're things like, you should be a good girl, or you should not be too loud or outspoken. And then, as you got older, lots of other people chimed in too with things like, you should be a certain weight, or a certain kind of employee, daughter, wife, or mother. And wow, motherhood is the mother lode of the should values. It seems a lot of people have a lot of thoughts about the kind of mothers we should be, or even about our decision to have kids at all. So here's the thing about the should values. In many ways, conforming to them makes life more comfortable. And so over time, we begin to prioritize the comfort of doing what's expected of us over the truth of who we are. Adhering to should over could and comfort over truth means no one will ever be mad at you, or at least that's what we think. We think we'll be accepted and loved by other people, that is, because when we prioritize should over could, the one person who is not accepting and loving us is us. Now let's talk about the could values, a much more pleasant topic. These are the values you choose for yourself. They tend to revolve around things you want to experience, or things you want to create, or ways you want to be in life. Some examples are curiosity, exploration, structure, acceptance, challenge, spontaneity, understanding, joy, dignity, honesty, accountability, and freedom. I could go on for some time because there's actually hundreds of good values available for us to choose. And each of us has our own unique combination of these good values. Loving and accepting ourselves actually requires us to prioritize our could values over the should values because they are the truth of who we really are. So, when we prioritize comfort over truth, we fall out of alignment with our core values. And when we fall out of alignment with our core values, we are essentially betraying ourselves. And we know it, and it feels terrible. We're now in a cycle that looks something like this. We experience a plateau that creates that awful sense of decline, and this causes us to become fearful. And from this fearful place, we begin to prioritize the comfort of conforming to the expectations of others over the truth of who we actually are. And this pulls us out of alignment with our core values. We focus on who and what we think we should be rather than who and what we know we could be. And in doing so, we betray ourselves. And this feels terrible, and we begin to beat ourselves up over it. And from this place of shame, we become entrenched in a small identity. We look something like this. And from this small identity, additional limiting patterns of belief and behavior arise. Essentially, we get in our own way because we believe we're meant to be small. And for some of us, we even actively resist opportunities when they arise for us to grow and become bigger. This leads us to feel even more stuck in our plateau and more fearful, and we continue to prioritize comfort over truth, and we continue to betray ourselves, and our identity becomes even more entrenched in smallness. In this pattern, we are defensive, reactive, and grasping. We tend to operate from a scarcity mindset. We find enemies at every turn. And the cycle continues in a downward spiral pattern. We get smaller and smaller and smaller until we're pretty much invisible. Our true self, the core of who we are, is hidden. No one can actually see us. And in our contractive state, we don't apply for that job or start that business. We don't call out someone's bullshit behavior. We don't speak up in meetings, or if we do any of those things, we beat ourselves up afterwards for not doing it well enough, for interrupting or not expressing ourselves properly. And we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? This is the essence of a contractive state. And the answer, of course, is actually, who are you not to be? This is a very famous quote from Marianne Williamson in her book, A Return to Love, and it's one of my favorite quotes because with virtually every client I've ever worked with throughout my career, I've heard some version of these words come out of their mouth, and I've seen myself fall into this type of mindset myself. This is the terrible thing about should values. They're so insidious. They sneak into our mindset. And they teach us that it's wrong to stand out, to express ourselves, or to focus on being the best version of ourselves because we tend to believe these things are selfish. But in fact, the exact opposite is true. We're here to live our could values. We're here to fulfill a purpose. We're here to grow and contribute. That's our job. Who are we not to do it? And the only way I know of to do that job well is to enter what I call an expansive cycle. It looks like this, and I'll explain it in detail in my next video, but for now, all you need to know is that when we're in an expansive state, we are grounded in solid core values and purpose, yet open to new ideas, people, and situations. And from this place, we experience heightened creativity, energy, and joy. So remember, this is who you were meant to be. It seems like such a simple thing, but it's not always easy. It requires constant practice, and that's what we're going to do here at the Expansive Woman Project. That's it for me for today. In my next video, we're going to learn all about how to become expansive, and I'll see you then.